I've got the screen up, so hopefully that'll work. Um,
Let
so
me.
we'll see here. Yeah, it looks
Well,
like
I
we're
guess I
good.
need to learn. I'll wait till you start the stream on YouTube and then I'll mute it.
Yeah.
See if that works.
All right, here we go. Hello, fellow wargamers and history buffs, and welcome to a live workshop on Bataille rules. And today we are looking at how to play the 5th edition rules. And so I'll kind of walk you guys through that, and we'll have some different samples. If you are interested in communicating live and in person, we have the Discord server up right now. And with the Discord server, there's a way that you could actually communicate with us. There's a voice channel called Workshop. If you go to that, you'll see I'm Doctor Who 42. There's a number of other fine gentlemen that have joined us there. So then you could ask questions. And then I am sharing the screen of the Vassal module on Discord, so you could watch it there. Or if you want to, you can, and you have Vassal, you can sign into Vassal. We are playing on the Dresden, Bataille de Dresden module. And so you can look at that and kind of play along with us here as we move stuff around. So let's just.
Eric, sorry, this is Mark Ruggiero. I was just wondering, and it's your show. I don't want to, but can maybe the other people just ID who they are? I'm Wargamer 1965.
Okay,
Not a
well,
big deal if you don't want to, but
no,
I was just
that
curious.
is exactly what we were going to do next. So, who else do we have in the live chat? It looks like we've got Rick White. Let's go ahead and say hi, Rick.
Hello. Hey, how's it going? I've
Doing great.
played a couple times with Eric over the last few years at Constant World. Mostly 5th edition. I played Premiere once, didn't really enjoy it. And then I played Regs 30 recently at Gettysburg, enjoyed that a lot with
Yeah,
Eric and a couple others.
yeah. That was a good
Plan to be
time. I
playing
liked
that.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it was a
cool.
lot of fun.
Cool. All right, and we have the Stigler himself, Mr. Alan Dickerson. Alan, do you want to say
Yeah,
hi?
that's me.
All
Hi,
right.
how's it going? I've been like a long time tire kicker, and I'm just trying to redouble my effort to finally get into these games. I've got a bunch of them. I've even got um, Vavra on pre-order and all that. So it's like, eventually I got to get into this. One question, just by the way, hopefully I won't derail things too far, but as far as the 5th edition rules, if I use the rules that came in the Beauchamp game, will those be close enough to where I can kind of use those as a reference, or do I need to maybe dig into my uh, 2 Waterloo games and find the 5th edition's rule book in there?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and I'll answer it right now before we carry on much further. The Beauchamp game that was published by Against the Odds magazine, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years ago by now, maybe. I'm not sure when it came out originally. Was originally designed with the premier rules, which are the Marshall Enterprise rules. And
Okay.
so even though I think Ed Wimble's he'd posted something on Facebook where he's got some maps and counter sets available to sell. They're still going to come out, and all the scenario rules and everything else that are with that he's selling with that are the ones that were from the Against the Odds magazine. So they will, in all
Okay.
likelihood, include the premier rules that came with it. If you have
I
gotten,
can just run upstairs and grab the 5th edition out of one of those boxes. I'm sure it's
yeah.
in
So
there.
if you have second edition Linny, if you have
Yeah, I have that.
the deluxe edition of Mont Saint Jean, it will
Yeah, I
have
have
the
that.
5th edition rules in it, and so those are what
Okay,
we're going to be working with.
I'll be right back.
Yeah. So cool. All right, we've got a couple other people who've popped in and joined us here on Discord. So do we have Brennan? Brennan, are you here with us?
Yep. Hey, everybody.
How are you doing?
Yay! Hi, Brennan.
Hey, everyone. I'm doing good. I love the La Bataille series, and it's been really great seeing the community get together. And Eric, thanks for leading it through all of your videos and channels and everything. And hey, Rick, good playing with you as always.
Yes, it's great to hear you.
Yeah. Well, and I'll chat with you later, Brennan, because I was talking with David. We're going to try to see if we can start back on a Monday night game. So I was curious if you were up for that.
Yep, let's do it.
Cool.
Overall, one thing I love to do with La Bataille is look at the different rules versions and try to think through how to create systematically optimized tactical approaches in each of the different rules.
All right. And then we've got somebody else who's popped in here. It doesn't always show me the names. They've got yeah, I think it's you with the arrow in the sun.
Right, that's me.
Is that you, Perry?
It is.
Hey, Perry, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks.
Good,
How are
good. Now, Perry, have you played La Bataille very much, or are you kind of getting into the
Very-
system?
I've started to set up a little and play on Vassal, and but I'm just learning the system. Right now I've been using Premiere for the most part, and so I'm kind of interested to see how this one compares.
Okay. Well, you'll find that there's a fair overlap with them. So, and of course, you guys heard earlier, Mark Ruggiero. So Mark was the one who sort of came up with the idea for this. Those of you that are on the La Bataille Facebook page, you might have seen that Mark had posted a poll or a questionnaire, gosh, probably a couple months back, saying, hey, who's interested in learning La Bataille and needs to know more about the rules? And then one of the other questions he asked was, hey, who wants to teach? And I made the mistake of saying, I'd be happy to. And so then Mark's like, kept poking me. He's like, hey, there's 18 people who said they want to learn. Come on. And so that's what prompted me to schedule last week's broadcast and this week's broadcast as well. So thanks, Mark, for taking the lead on that.
Well, I really appreciate you doing this because I would have done it. I got to be honest, I just haven't had the energy. But I'm sure the community's happy you're doing it because you're kind of like the expert too. So I'm just kind of was hoping that Scott and there were a couple other people that were like so anxious, and I don't think they've gotten on either one. Maybe they've watched the broadcast afterwards, but
well, and
yeah.
the reason I am live streaming it is I know that we've got people that, at least on the Facebook page, who were interested, but because of the time difference, they're in Europe or they're
Right.
somewhere else, they couldn't watch it. So people will be able to watch it on the live stream, the broadcast after the fact. And I think we had, when I checked it middle part of last week, there were only over 260 people had watched the broadcast from last week.
So that's great.
So that's very good. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get some people chiming in here. So if you are watching it on YouTube and you have questions, you can write in the chat, and I will take a look at those. If you are here in the Discord channel, then just go ahead and chime in and say, hey, I've got a question about this or that, and I'll do my best to answer it. Fortunately, Brennan is here with me, so that's great. He is an expert in the rules as well. I just play an expert on television, so there's a subtle difference. And my friend David Plock has joined me here as well. How are things in Florida, David?
Oh, it's fine here. Fine here. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad you could make it.
Eric, can I ask, is there and I think you've probably answered this and I may even have it. Is there a Ligne Vassal module also? Because I may be, once I kind of get my schedule more together, I think I want to try to do a Vassal game so I can at least get some plays in. I have all my tables are booked up right now, both of my tables.
Yeah, there is. It's a real nice Vassal module the same gentleman who did the vassal module for Moskva, I believe, did the vassal module for Ligny. And I think he's in the process of putting the finishing touches on a vassal module for Mont Saint Jean. And I know,
okay.
yeah, so that should be, I looked, I didn't see it up on either Vassal Engine or on Limey Yank yet, but I know that he was in the process of playtesting it. So I'm sure here shortly, within the next, couple of months, that should be available. But there's a really nice Ligny module. And in fact, David and myself and a few other friends have played on it. And so it works really well. So,
Yeah, because I may throw something out there later about seeing if people are interested in trying to do something. Because I definitely have some time. We just got to figure out, the time and stuff. So
cool.
We were actually quite interested if people are leaning that way about possibly doing a Ligny Vassal on Mondays, although the game hasn't been chosen for the Mondays.
If you guys do that, I'd be interested at least knowing about it. And I would love to, because Monday is actually a pretty decent day for me. It's 2 days before my chemo and far enough away from chemo where if I know ahead of time, I usually can set aside a couple hours, 3 hours, make sure I'm functionable.
Well, cool. We'll post something where I've got to send an email out to our usual gang of players and see what everyone's up to. And then maybe we'll put something up either here on Discord or in on the Facebook page and see if we can't get you in a game or find a game of some sort.
And if there's enough interest, I think I know enough about the game where I could start up a separate one, maybe for beginners too, and do because there's some good scenarios to ease people in, right? And then,
yep.
Because, I've done a campaign of Ligny, not the whole thing, but I've done a good chunk of the first part of it. And I've also prepped, and I didn't get to go, but I got, but I've read enough of Moscow.
Right.
So, but I've played enough where I'm not an expert, but I think I'm fairly comfortable with it.
Cool.
So we'll see.
Well, that's half the battle. And it looks like Gary has joined us as well. How are you, Gary?
Doing well. Looks like a lot
Awesome.
of people today. That's great.
Yeah, we got a good turnout. Gary, I know that you play bar, but have you played La Bataille very much?
I played once like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And that's it. So.
Okay, well, good. Well, hopefully we won't scare you away. Hopefully this will help encourage you to pick it up and get going. So I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction here with some of the ideas. So for those of you that might have tuned in to the broadcast last week where we went through the sequence of play for Premier rules, the sequence of play for the 5th edition rules is very similar. The 5th edition rules themselves are sort of a hybrid. They are a combination of the 3rd edition rules, which were published back in the probably late 80s, early 90s. And sprinkled into those are some of the ideas that came out with the Regs 23, Marie-Louise, Regs 30. These are the ideas of a chit pull for maneuver units, a chit pull for various activities like artillery fire, reinforcements, leader movement, regroup of units, etc. And so it has a little bit of a mesh of these, plus it's got a command control system. The original older versions of La Bataille, like Premier Rules, like the 3rd edition, did not have any innate command control. So you had 10 minutes to move, and that was kind of your cap on how much you could get done. When Clash of Arms put out Quatre Bras, Ligny, and Mont Saint Jean, the first editions, back in the mid-90s, they had, as part of the rules for those games, some command control. So you had to be within a certain proximity of your corps leader. The units had to be within a certain proximity of their division leader or brigade leader, etc. So this was sort of the start of having some sort of command control in it, but it wasn't part of the rule system itself. It was just kind of built into those. Then when Lutzen came out, there was much more detailed command control and the chit pull and some of these other concepts that have now become a regular part of the more up-to-date rule systems. So with the 5th edition game, one thing that you're going to have is there is a sort of a pre-turn activity. And if you've had a chance to download the sequence of play cards that I had printed out and made a number of years ago, they're on the Facebook page. I think I also have uploaded them to Discord under the 5th edition tab. And we're going to start off with the command segment. And so with the command segment, this is where you're going to take a look at how many command points each side has. So typically, the command points are based on army leaders that are on the map, corps leaders that are on the map, and sometimes some other special rules that might be dictated. And so based on the number of leaders you have, that indicates how many command points you have. And so then you're going to be creating maneuver units. So if you have a couple of command points, you have, say, a pair of corps leaders on the map, you can then use that command point to then create a maneuver unit. And the maneuver unit is then going to be designated onto either a corps or onto maybe a division in the corps or maybe onto a brigade of cavalry, whatever the case might be, where you want to kind of put your focus. And the maneuver unit is then going to allow you to have that unit activated when your turn to move comes up.
Question at this point.
Yes.
If the count of maneuver units is basically built on the number of corps commanders who are on the map, why would you ever not use each command point for those corps commanders and, of course, any divisions under them? And why would you instead use it for one specific division of a corps? Why would you?
Well, you have segued into a perfect opportunity for us to take a look at it in the game here itself. So we're looking here. We are at Vassal. We're at the Battle of Dresden. This is scenario 3. I haven't set up the whole map, but if you're looking at the eastern half of the map, over here by the Gross Garden, and readouts 1 and 2, I've set down some units just so we have an example of how things are done. In this particular scenario, there's only one corps commander who starts off on the map for the French, and that is Saint-Cyr. He is over here. He has one command point that he can use then to activate his forces. Now, because there's no army leader on the map yet, he's considered active. So that is, he is a corps commander, is considered active. So if he is within range of his division leaders, then he can put them all into command. And then with his single command point, he can move both divisions. Now, if we take a look at Saint-Cyr, he needs to be within 6 of his division leaders in order to have them in command. So he's here. He has a division leader here with the 44th Division who is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, he's 7 hexes away. He's a little too far away to put him in command, but that doesn't matter. He's got the command point. He can put him in command, or he can put this division in command, or he can put Pierre's cavalry in command, okay? He can spend a point on either of those folks. Ideally, Saint-Cyr wants to get somewhere here maybe in another, at the end of this turn, he'll be here where he is then within command span of both of these division leaders and can keep them both in command. Okay.
Eric, I could add a quick thought here if it would be interesting.
Sure, please do.
The question was, why would you ever want to use a core's command point to assign just an individual division? And one way of thinking about it is that usually you do want to use the command point to activate the whole core, but occasionally there's a need for like special missions or special task forces. And then if there's a special maneuver you need to do or a special location you need to attack or take, you might find it makes sense to take that one command point and maybe move like the cavalry division, like we looked at Pire just now. Like maybe there's a rush or a defense that cavalry division needs to throw up a screen. So then you would use that command point for it. Another example in the Prussian army at Ligny, we were just talking about, you can do a lot of delegation of cavalry assets and artillery assets from the corps level down to a division or to a brigade, so that, for example, at Ligny, the Prussians can create really quite a powerful brigade task force that has the infantry brigade and then gets assigned a bunch of like all the horse artillery of that corps plus the cavalry division of that corps. Now you've got a really powerful task force, but it's not the whole corps. It's like a chunk of it. So that's when you might want to.
Got it.
And
Now, also, if you have two command points by dint of having two corps commanders on the field, can you like rob Peter to pay Paul and basically say, no, I'm going to use both
for
command
something
points
else
in the same corps?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So the
For
command
two
points
divisions
are
that are separated.
Yep. So the command points are completely fungible in most cases, unless there's some stipulation, which there are in some scenarios. You'll see something, but for the most part, yes, you could use that command point to move, two divisions in another corps, or to do something on the other side of the map, and your corps leader's on the east side of the map, and you're using his command point over on the west side of the map. The command points are completely independent for the most part, of who they're assigned to or where they're being generated from. So that's a good point.
That makes sense because what little I know of the Napoleonic era says that there's special attention always paid to specific units, and the other ones pretty much stand around. There's not a lot of individual initiative that was being used. It was like you stand and you wait until you get your orders, and until then, you just stand there.
Right, and I think what they're trying to do with this particular concept with command points was have the players make choices each turn on where they need to focus. And so instead of you, like in the earlier rule systems where you could just move things higgly-piggly anywhere, now you really have to kind of not only keep the focus on where you're going to spend your command points, but then you also have to keep your divisions or your corps, you have to keep things within a certain proximity. So you then get away from this sort of historical inaccuracies where you have, some random battalion or regiment making this big crazy march around the map, which you could have done with the older rule systems, but this is kind of keeping you tied in, so you've got to keep things within a certain proximity. So in this particular case, for the French, we're going to, because the Prussians are kind of breathing down our neck here, we're going to take one of our command points and let's see if I can find a handy dandy. If we go here to the command button, yeah, we're going to take a command marker off, and we're going to plunk it down onto the 44th Division. So that's where we're going to do ours. Now, in addition to that, we can also roll for cavalry initiative. So a lot of the light cavalry have got some decent leaders, and Pujol, of course, is one of the better ones out there. So he can roll for light cavalry initiative, and so it's based on his cavalry leader bonus. For him, it's a 5. So if he rolls a 5 or less, he'll put himself in initiative, and that will give us a second maneuver unit. But that maneuver unit can only be used for his cavalry brigade. So he can't roll for initiative and then you give it to somewhere else. He can only use it for himself, and you can only roll for initiative for these light cavalry leaders once you've assigned all your other command points. So if it's a case like Brennan had said, hey, maybe there's a really vital mission that you have to do with this group of cavalry, you might want to use that command point from your corps commander to activate this guy instead of risking maybe him not being able to put himself in initiative. And so that would be a choice where you'd have, okay, this is so important, I'm not going to risk. I mean, he's one of the better guys. A lot of the guys don't have as good a roll. You'd have to roll a 2 or a 3 or something or less to get them to activate. So that's a case where you might want to use a command point to make sure that light cavalry got going. So we roll a single dice and see what comes up, and Pujol rolls a 5. So that's enough to put him in command. And so we have 2 maneuver units on the French side. Now, if we take a look at things on the Allied side, we've got a Russian corps leader. We've got Winningston over here by Blasowitz and his force. He's got a division of Russians over here. And then down a little further south, we've got, who is this? Kleist, who is the corps leader for the Prussians. And we're going to just say, for the sake of argument, let's see if I can find somewhere here.
He's cosplaying Napoleon.
We're going to
a lot like Napoleon.
Yeah, we're going to grab who? We're going to grab, not Schwarzenberg. Well, we're going to grab Barclay de Tolly. And we're going to put Barclay de Tolly over here. Barclay de Tolly is an army commander here at Dresden. And we're going to say that he starts stacked here with Kleist. So Kleist is active, and he can therefore have any division that's within his range is going to be able to go. We'll move him just a little closer. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll move him up here a little bit.
You show where on the back side of his counter where his range is?
So the standard rules are Army commanders have a range of 10 hexes to their corps commanders. Corps commanders have a range of 6 to their division or brigade leaders. And then the division leaders usually have a range of 3 to their individual units. And then brigade leaders have maybe a range of 2 or 3, depending on what's stipulated in the rules, to their units. Light cavalry have a range of whatever their leader is. So in the case of Pujol, he's got a 5 is his command rating. So he actually has a range of 5 to any of his individual units. So that's something that's kind of particular for the cavalry leaders. Otherwise, it's usually 10, 6, and 3, if we're looking at it that way. And sometimes there'll be rules where if there's a windmill or Napoleon is stacked with Berthier, there's like a bonus to the range. And so therefore then the army leader can reach out further, or the corps leader, if he's stacked on top of the windmill, might be able to get a longer range too. But that's something that's generally specific to the scenario or the map that you're playing on. Any other questions about the command so far?
No, crystal clear.
Cool. So what we've got here is we've actually have 3 command points for the Allies. So we have one for Whittingston, we've got one for Kleist, and then we have one for Barclay de Tolly. So we've got 3 that we can spend. We can use one single, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, we can use one single command point here on Kleist to put him in command, and the entire Prussian corps is now in command. So therefore, both of these divisions, Ziethen's division and Perch's division, can all move. Basically, 2 divisions move with 1 maneuver unit. So you want to try to, whenever you can, get the most bang out of your buck in this regard.
Is he active as a corps commander?
He is, because he's stacked with an army leader.
Okay.
Yeah, so I kind of fudged it. I grabbed Barclay de Tolly from the other side of the map and ripped him over there, so that way he would. But then if we go up to Whittingston, now he's a corps commander. He is not in command. That is, he's not active because he hasn't stacked with an army leader and stayed within a range of 10. So he still generates a command point, but if he's got multiple, he can't activate his entire corps. So he would then be using his command point to activate Roth's division here. So we're going to grab a chit and drop it down there on Roth. So now we have the Prussian corps and one of the Russian divisions are active, and that still leaves us with one more command point that we can spend. And what we can do then is maybe put one of these brigades into do a charge or something like that. So we're going to use our final command point to put this little cavalry brigade, that's Prussian cavalry brigade, over here into order so they can do something. So we've spent our 3 command points. So now what we would do is, if you've got a cup, or in this case we've got our virtual cup, we're going to drop 2 chits into the cup for the French, and we're going to drop 3 chits into the cup for the Allies. And then we're going to drop into the cup our usual chits for artillery, reinforcements, leaders, and regroup. Okay? And so at this point
Just
in time,
quickly, as a bit of a sort of tactical note, is that quite often in the first 1 or 2 hours of a game, you'll end up with individual divisions moving. But it makes a lot of sense. There's a real urgency to get your corps together for united action when the main engagements begin. You really want to have all the divisions under command and all the corps leaders active by then. So sometimes there's a little bit of fragmented division movement early on, but everybody's trying to get their corps into full activation.
Yeah.
Or maybe the defender has been surprised, hasn't really gotten his army up and organized, but the battle starts anyway. So, he's got to spend maybe a couple of turns getting that critical mass together so that he can use MUs more wisely as time goes on. But you don't always get the choice of how the battles start.
Correct. And with some of the different scenarios and battles, you've got cases where you don't have any maneuver units at all. You can roll for light cavalry, but that's it sometimes. So at Lutzen, the French have got nothing until I think Ney shows up, a couple hours into the game. At Quatre-Bras, it's the same sort of thing. Yeah, wow. Yeah. I mean, there's I don't know. It's very painful. The French have to basically survive without any maneuver units, unless they get a lucky, light cavalry initiative for more than a few turns. So yeah, and that's because they basically caught with their pants down. So if you were playing with a rule set that didn't have this sort of command stuff, well, you can move around, you could do all kinds of fun stuff, but it's not really capturing the full disaster which was happening historically, where you're kind of like sitting around waiting for somebody to show up and give you orders. In the meantime, you're getting beaten up. So some of the different games, then, because they have the command control and these different mechanisms, then you are facing the same sort of challenges and painful situation that was really going on historically.
Yeah, I read a book recently on Quatre Bras from the French perspective, and there was a lot of mention made of, Ney and basically his dithering to go and take the crossroads. He never got a specific order until very late to actually take that crossroads when he really could have. They were, just south of there, just, boiling coffee and, having a few baguettes and, and Ney was already kind of predisposed not to do much anyway.
Right.
So, that's why the battle got started as late as it did, because, he was dithering. So, yeah, it's interesting to have that, that historical condition placed on you where, as a player with a 10,000-foot view and nice books of history to pore over, hey, Ney could have just walked up and just taken the crossroads and then made Picton have to impale himself on his, position.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, well, he could have, but he didn't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So, and that's one of the things that with particularly the Quatre Bras, Mont Saint Jean, Ligny, here at Dresden, you really get a feel for it, where you are trying to, particularly the French initially, you've just got the one corps leader who's trying to cover, a crisis happening all around him. And so as the player, then you are dealing with a lot of really interesting and challenging, choices that you have to make. And this is one of the things that I find most appealing about this game is the different types of choices that you are forced to think about or do. And so this is one of them. So the first one is your command. So once we've got all our command chits in, then what you're going to do, you and your play partner are going to be then alternating drawing chits from the cup. And David, is your vassal working well enough? Do you want to play the French, or do you want to play the Allies?
Actually, I'm kind of desktoped into my other computer, and it probably would be, maybe Brennan could do something a little easier if he's in the Discord.
He's not in the.
I'm not
thing.
set up for Vassal tonight.
Hey,
I'm
so
on
Rick, do you want to?
Next up.
Yeah. There you go. You're our pinch hitter
all
there.
right.
Who do you want to play? Do you want to play the French, or do you want to play the Allies?
I'll play the Allies since they're more aggressive.
Okay, that's you. All right, so we go to the cup, and you can open the little cup thing there on the vassal module, and then you just go to the cup itself, and you're just going to grab a little chit, and you're going to drop it down. And I drew the Allied chit. So what that means is the Allied player is going to go. So with some of the chit pull, like with Regs or Marie Louise, the specific chit that you pull up is the specific maneuver unit that you do. In 5th edition, if you draw a Allied chit, then all of the Allied maneuver units go. And you've got 10 minutes to do your move in. Now, just like with Premier, you have a charge phase. So at this particular point in time, Rick would identify which units he's going to charge, and he can Yeah, and they don't need to be ones that are part of a maneuver unit. So, for example, there's some Prussian cavalry that's down here, sort of south of the Grossgarten. They're currently out of command, but it doesn't matter. They can still charge in 5th edition. So you don't have to have a maneuver unit assigned to you in order to charge. And usually what you're doing with 5th edition is you're using your maneuver unit to get the pieces in place for a charge the next turn. Or you want to put them in a spot where they can, they can be in a position to do a charge in the future or to react in some way to defend yourself.
Now, does that mean that cavalry can mount a charge when they have not been given a maneuver unit, have not rolled to do it on their own initiative, but they must charge and can't do something else like just movement somewhere?
So
Is that
yeah, so
correct?
if you look down here, I'm just going to sort of south of the soccer field here that's at the Grossgarten, you'll see that there's a Prussian Hussar unit and there's a Prussian Lancer unit. They are out of command. There's no leader near them. They are beyond the command range of their corps leader. Their brigade leader is not anywhere nearby. So they, so they could charge, or they could just stay where they're at, or when the regroup chit is drawn, they could move to put themselves closer to their leader. So they don't have to charge, but they can't move during the movement phase. So only units that are part of a maneuver unit can move during the movement phase. So in this particular example, those two units are out of command. They couldn't move in the maneuver phase. This Prussian division is in command because it's part of this corps. It's within range of the corps leader. This division is in command. It's within range of the corps leader. It's part of this as well. So, so they're all in command except for these 3 units, which were out of command.
Okay.
Yeah.
Eric, this is Mark.
Yes, Mark.
I guess I just learned something, so that's good. But I hate to ask, and if you don't, do you ever is there an actual rules reference number for that, or is it just in the rules for where you don't need to be part of a MU to charge? I
So,
guess
yeah,
I'm
I'd be-
learning here.
Yeah, I'd
So
be happy to cite it for you because it's I believe, let's see, 7.2.b. So if a chit is drawn indicates the side is to move in that movement, it's preceded by the charge as of all phase. All cavalry belonging to the active side of that owning player that wished to charge this turn are declared as such. So it's very
well
simple.
done.
All cavalry
It's right
belonging
there.
to that active side that wish to charge can.
Sure.
So, of course, because Rick is playing this side, he's decided to do all cavalry. Rick. Rick,
Just
maybe we'll
pick
just
one.
Oh, that
maybe we'll just
Just
do
pick
1 or
one.
2 for as an example, so
Yeah,
we can
just
then
pick
move on
one.
to other stuff. Yeah. So
Rick made a devastating cavalry charge against us at Jena, and he's really good at it.
yeah. So once you've declared the ones that are going to charge, in this
We'll do
particular
the guys in the
case,
south.
yeah, in this particular case, you'd have to also reference what's going on with the scenario rules. So there's a number of units here that are of questionable skill. These are the Prussian Landwehr. So the Prussian Landwehr actually have to make a morale check in order to launch a charge. The only unit that's here that's guaranteed to charge is this one regular Hussar unit. All the rest have to make a morale check. Now, that's not true for all the games. In some games, sometimes the Landwehr are going to be fine. In some cases, they're going to have to make a morale check. Oftentimes the Cossacks will have to make a morale check, or sometimes the Cossacks aren't allowed to charge at all. So the scenario is going to stipulate that. So Rick, do you want to just make some checks here real soon? If they fail their morale check, they don't rout or anything like that. They just don't go through with their charge.
He's
So
at
go ahead and roll for
33.
I think
him.
Landwehr is German for
So-
router.
So yeah, so he failed in a big way.
Yeah.
All right, next one up here.
Oh, do you want to do them up there? All right.
Yeah. I mean, if they all
Assuming
fail,
just
then
as bad. That's 34.
you rolled a 34.
Do it.
Oh
Nope,
no, you rolled a
55. He's
55.
gone.
He's going. This guy here.
Let's see. His morale is 34.
Yep.
He likes it.
And the top unit.
And he's at 35. So he goes
Hey,
to.
they're all going. Okay,
All
so
those doubles. Oh
Yeah.
boy, the vassal die roller is in a mood.
yes, indeed. I figured if
And
anyone's going to have
1-1,
a
5-5,
yeah.
4-5, and 5-5.
All right. So at this point, the person who's doing the charges can elect to announce them and conduct them in any order that he wants to. So Rick, which unit? Go ahead and flash which unit you want to.
Yeah, we'll keep it simple. This
Yeah.
guy's going to just go forward.
Okay. So usually what you guys are going to do is either move the unit or move the charge marker, whichever works better. So he's, he goes forward and then he's just going to keep going, whatever the movement is. And I don't have all the movement charts, but he's just pounding forward. There we go. Now, when he gets
He's going
here,
across a bridge.
yeah, he went across the stream. So I'm sure he paid something.
Stream's a
for
plus
it.
2.
Yeah.
The stream is a plus 2 for
Yes.
cavalry.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points to get to that point. Now he's within 2 of this of a French skirmish unit. So at this point in time, he'd have to declare whether that's the target of the charge or not. If it's not the target of the charge, then he would just keep going on down the line. If it is the target of charge, then at that point in time, I'd have some options as far as what I would want to do with the skirmish unit or with the cavalry that's back here, whether I elect to react with them in some way. So, Rick,
On
is this
charge.
guy the target of the charge? Say no.
He is not the target of charge.
Okay, cool. Push forward again.
Isn't your range 6?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I could have countercharged him at any point, but I actually want Rick to move
Oh,
a
then
little
we
bit
go there?
further. Oh, I want you to go through so we can do opportunity charge, opportunity fire.
All right.
So as he moves from this hex to this hex, the skirmishers can get a shot at him. And so I think I've got 3. Yeah, I've got 3 increments there. And I think those guys fire at ×3. So it's going to be 9 to 6. So that's going to be 1.5 to 1 with a +4 for the size of the unit. So I roll the dice and I roll a 54. That's good enough for a hit.
It's just terrible. At least, at least I don't have a leader.
Eric, you're a sandbagger. You were just waiting for this.
Yeah. So now he's got to make a morale check.
No problem.
Oh, yeah, he passes it with flying colors. So now at this point, you're within range of 2 of these 2 units. So the question is, which one is the target of your charge?
I am just going straight ahead.
Okay. So, but you have to say which one is the target of your charge.
The guy straight ahead.
Straight ahead. Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
this guy is. Right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can countercharge you with this guy here. So I'll make a reaction roll. A 13. Oh, I think he failed. So now I'll do a reaction charge with this guy.
Oh, what do you compare to
So I'm looking at
the
his
13?
morale. So this guy has a morale of 26 and I rolled a 13. So he fails
Got
to do a reaction charge. So then I rolled for this unit and they rolled a 62 and they had a bonus with Pier being stacked on top of them as well. So they are going to basically spur forward and meet him there. If I just stayed there, then Rick would have gotten a bonus for charging 3 straight. Um, and he would have been doubled against me. So because I did this reaction charge, now I am considered the attacker, and so that's why Rick is then turned the marker around. So unlike in Premiere, where during the phase, if you're the person moving and charging, even if you're reaction charged, you're still technically the attacker. In 5th edition, if you make a reaction charge, you then become the attacker. So we've got that. So that ends that charge, and so now we can go somewhere else.
Oh,
Quick
do you want me to do
question
more?
about
Go
So,
ahead.
reaction
Eric-
charge rule.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I have a quick question about reaction charge rules.
Yes.
In regs 30, when there is a reaction charge, let's say not adjacent, but at some range of 2 or 3 or 5 hexes away, the charging unit that gets reaction charge against is required to turn and face the reaction charge and meet it head to head. In 5th edition, as I recall, if there's some separation distance before the reaction charge is done, then the units, the original charging cavalry doesn't have to choose to face the reaction. It can move, it could go off and try for the infantry.
That's
Well,
correct.
The
Yeah,
reaction.
Yeah. So if we were to just kind of reset things here slightly, and
the other thing
say,
I'll add is they have that cone, right, Eric? And that
yeah,
cone
they
is set.
basically, so they're going to, light cavalry exerts a charge reaction zone that goes out 6 hexes from it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all the way out here. So if he wanted to try to skirt this zone with this unit, and say he say he's got this unit here that's going to charge, right? And it goes here, and now it's entered the reaction charge zone of this unit here, right? And it's heading towards that cavalry, right? So it's going to go along here. This guy is going to go, say he makes his morale check and he passes. So he moves forward, and then they move forward. And he moves forward, whoops, 1 movement point, and they move forward 1 movement point. And he moves forward, and they move forward. And he's basically, sorry guys. You're kind of doing it until you catch him or he gets out of your zone, right? So what Brendan was referring to, it's possible that you could charge through a portion of the enemy's reaction zone, and they wouldn't be able to catch you before you got past them. And
Which
so
some players will do to try and draw your guys out so that they can then do something else, right?
Yeah, and there's times that you want to do that for the purpose of pulling them away. So then that opens up a gap somewhere else, right? So if this cavalry unit goes charging off this way to go meet this other guy, imagine I've got a bunch of people over here. Now they can march up and they can do something. So it's a case where you can you're playing a game. And so
there's a lot of
volition. Yeah.
There's a lot of volition for both the attacker and the reactor.
Yeah.
Whereas in Reg 30, for example, once that reaction charge is declared and rolled for, the original charging cavalry has no choice. It has to go meet that.
Yeah. And in most cases here, and so, if I was trying to reaction charge and he was way out here on the periphery, he could turn and he could go off in a different direction and thwart me, making my reaction charge. But, it's Rick, and he just wants to go and beat up some cavalry. So who's going to stop him from doing that?
No, we're just showing you how it works.
Eric,
yes,
the other,
and then
the other thing you want to
note.
cover for a second would be just explain a little bit of the differences in how the charge movement itself works. Whereas in last week we were discussing Premier, where you had to move into the first hex directly in front of you. It's not the same here. The rules are slightly different on how you can move. Um, um,
Yeah, I'm turning in a
but
second.
similar. It's not a strict torpedo like it is in the Premier.
Yes, that's a great point. And I'll be happy to give an example of it. Brennan, you had a point you wanted to raise as well.
I'll just quickly, so Rick had charged with the first cavalry unit. There was a reaction charge, making the reaction charger the attacker. If Rick had wanted to, he could then have thrown in the second regiment and they would switch the attacker back to him.
Correct. Yeah. So if this unit was closer, it can react to the reaction charge, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So say this one was sitting here, it failed to charge during its charge declaration phase, but it can now react to the French reaction charge. So then he could then bring this unit up to react to this initial unit here. And then I can react to that reaction. So you can get a lot of
And
sort of
it's
back
actually-
and forth.
It's
Cats
quite
and
important
dogs living
tactically.
together. Chaos.
Yeah, it's important tactically because the side that is the attacker rolls the dice, and usually the melee table favors the attacker. So if you're trying to land a cavalry charge successfully, you want to, if you can, end up with the person with the last dog into the fight.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So let's say, for example, that this unit was here. Go ahead, Rick, see if they make their morale check.
See, I failed twice.
35.
Oh, I think I made it exactly, or one above.
They're a 33. Yep. So in
Oh,
5th
yeah.
edition, if you hit the number or above, you pass. So if Rick had rolled a 33 or higher, then they would go in. This is different than Premier rules and some of the other rule sets where you have to roll above that number. You'd have to roll a 34 or better to get them to go. In 5th edition, if you hit their morale number or above, that they would go in. So then these guys could go forward, and then I could have reaction for more cavalry, and we just have this big swirling mess over here. Getting to what David was talking about, the cavalry units in the charge if they're going to change their orientation, that is, they're going to turn, they're paying 2 movement points to do that. So if we had a
I was
unit,
gonna do that up here.
yeah. So if you're going to do that with one of the ones there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Why don't you go ahead and demonstrate? So we're up here with here north of it's soccer field number 4 here.
The sportsplex.
Sportsplatz.
that's
Grossgarten
2.
Sportsplatz.
So I spent 2 to turn my arc.
Yep.
Or my fate team.
Right.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3 to go across. So that'd be 10 plus 4, 14 to there. Now you're thinking to yourself, why is it 14 and I only have 13? Because when you declare charge, you have plus 5 to your movement.
Yep.
And notice how he zigged off the straight line.
Right. Light cavalry, the way light cavalry moves is different than how heavy cavalry moves. So with heavy cavalry, your rear hex has to face basically the hex that you just came from. Right? It has to face one of your former front hexes, which is going to be this. Okay? Light cavalry, if it's in column, right? So say, for example, this light cavalry unit here, it's got it's got a whole bunch of front-facing hex sides, right? Front. So it can go here, it can side slip, and now its rear hex is facing one of its former front hex sides. So the light cavalry can do a little bit more of a zigzag as it goes, while the heavy cavalry is much more like a torpedo. It's got to go 1, 2, and then if it wants to turn, Then there's 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, they're the target of the charge. 7, 8 kind of stuff. So there's some subtleties in how the movement works. The heavy cavalry is moving like we saw with the Premier rules last week as a torpedo, where you've got to turn it if you're going to go. The light cavalry here can kind of zigzag. Nice move. So you're going to move your charge marker.
We
I
can
presume.
ignore all that stuff.
No, I love
Like
this.
that.
So now you're going to go ahead and
I'm
let's.
gonna make a
ask-
mark suggestion and ask for a rules case citing for the difference between light and heavy cavalry and the way that they move.
All right, give me a second here, because I did have to look this up when we were out at Gettysburg playing 5th edition.
It's in
Yeah, we're not calling you a
16
liar. We just want to
Right.
know.
It's in 16.2.
Yep.
And the key key sentence in there is about the let me just see, it may make one moves. In other words, it may only charge through its front orientation. Its rear hex must end up adjacent to one of its former front hexes without changing the unit's facing. And you can do that with light, because light has 5 front hexes
When it's in column.
when it's in column. When it's but
Which
heavy
is on
in
page
column.
10.
Yeah,
This
so
is page
16.2,
Mhm.
which is on page 26.
Then
of mine.
16.3.5 is charging in a straight line. Oh, that's for the
Yes.
last 3 hexes.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
to get the bonus,
bonus.
for combat. That basically doubles
Right.
your melee value.
Okay. Yeah, you want to do that. Okay.
Cool. All right, Rick, you've got a
All right,
couple more
on.
charges, and then we can resolve some of this stuff.
If you want, okay.
Yeah, why don't you do the one here? Let's charge one of the skirmish units, just so we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
do that as an
do that.
example.
Turn 1, 2. Oh my God, there's a leader here. He's gonna turn 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All right, so at
and-
this point, you've got.
Oh wait, that's an artillery. Do you want me to do the skirmisher? Here, I'll
yeah,
go
we've
over
already
here.
got an artillery going on here. Do one of the skirmishers, like over here.
I was gonna
Or you could do
this
the one that's right
So you can
here,
go
too.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can go.
So you declare
Do
him. So when
skirmish
you're
stuff.
within a range of 2, you declare him as the target, right?
Yep.
And so then at this point in 5th edition rules, I've got a couple of options. One option would be that I can wait for him to come over the creek and then retreat retreat through a friendly unit. Or I can form square. So the allies have a mechanism for forming square. I can't remember what it's
Rally
called.
square?
Rallying
Skirmisher?
square. Yeah,
Yeah.
skirmishers can form rallying square, and the French, and that's basically just a morale check that they make. The French would roll on the square realization table if they opt to do that. So you then, as the player with the skirmishers, you can either retreat into general order terrain. So if I were adjacent to a village or the woods or something like that, I could retreat into that terrain. Or I could retreat through a friendly unit, or I could try to form square. So, all right, everybody who's there in the chat, what do you want to have me try to do? Form square or retreat?
Can the skirmishers basically just be driven into the unit behind it?
Yeah, they would actually retreat through it. So I would.
Why wouldn't they stop if they came from that unit, say?
Oh, but they
Like
they
the
aren't.
British?
Yeah, they're not. These are not like skirmishers that are associated. They're an entire battalion of Legere.
Got you.
Right.
Okay.
So that's
okay.
different. I mean, if you've been playing Quatre-Bras, right, or yeah, I mean, principally Quatre-Bras is the one that's got the clouds of little light companies, then yes,
Yeah.
they would go back to their parent battalion and stack at the bottom. In this particular case, it's the Leger unit can retreat through, and they would just go back, and they could end here, kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's what would happen if I retreated. If I'm going to form square, and I'll form square just so we can go through an example of forming square. So we've got this square realization table. Let's see where I've got it here. Hopefully they've got it here.
Start the
66.
table.
66.
Yep, it's here under stacking. So the French, we're at 2 hex range. And am I being charged? Are those guys lancers?
Looks like they have a lance. Let's see. Look at the counter front. Let's see. Yeah, they are. They do.
Okay, so I'll have a +6 on my die roll for that. And let's see, is there any other stuff? They're not provisionals. So it's basically, I'm just going to make a die roll, and there'll be a +6. So here we roll a 64. That's pretty bad. +6, that's going to be right off the chart. So at a 2 hex range, they are going to rout. So they're going to go ahead and let's flip them over, and we're going to mark them as routed.
Plus grand the sword.
Yeah, plus grand. All right, now we're into the woods here, where I've got to look at my handy dandy note here to see what goes on, because it's been a while. So infantry as a target, charge, form square, failure, disordered, marked, routed, mark the unit as routed. Okay, so at this point in time, he can. I'm just
he
going to
just
sit
route
there.
around it?
I'm just going to sit there routed until he comes adjacent to me,
Yeah. there
and
you go.
then he can either, or he could pick a new target, and do a recall. Try to recall. But if he wants to pursue me
Well,
and
who
grind
says
me
he's
up,
the target?
you already declared him as the target.
I did. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you
go ahead.
did.
You did.
All right.
All right, Rick. On now.
There,
I'm
we,
gonna
we
attempt
got
to recall.
witnesses.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna attempt to recall.
All right. Yeah. Joe, you had the right option. Joe, so it's just one die, Rick.
Oh, it's one die.
Joe was saying retreat, retreat, retreat. So, yeah, usually retreating is a better way to do it, unless they're a long ways off. And I could have, when I saw him, once he was 4 hexes away, I could have tried to form square then. But oftentimes, particularly if there's, the circumstances, you may want to wait and see where the guy's going before you form square. And if you're worried that there's enemy infantry that can come and attack you, you generally don't want to form square if you're then going to get either shot with artillery or infantry. So cool. So Rick, what do you want to do? Oh, you rolled a 6. All right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Is that a good roll or a bad roll here at Dresden?
I want to say it's a bad roll, but I'm not sure.
It is a bad roll. Yeah, the Prussians, you would do it on a roll of 1 through 3. So,
But I have a leader, so it's 1 through 4, right?
1 through 4, but a 6 ain't going to cut
Yeah.
it.
I
So
know.
they are going
No.
to move adjacent, and
Ooh. Oh, I guess you don't get a shoot yet.
I don't get to shoot, yeah, because I only get opportunity fire. Only the guy
And
who's being
move.
attacked gets to shoot. He's routed, so he doesn't get to do anything. So at this stage in the game, how many movement points did you spend?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12,
12?
13, 14.
14. Right, and so you have 18. So you've got 4 left. So in this particular circumstance, for every 2 movement points that you have, well, actually, I have to retreat first, and then we look at the distance between us. So I'm going to have to retreat back through I could retreat through my skirmishers, I guess, here. So you look at the distance between us, and then we then take a look at how many losses I would have. And I'm looking here at...
Like the difference divided by 2 or something?
Yeah.
Can't remember.
So this is, just for those of you that are following at home, 16.6 pursuit. Right. So there's so you have a positive 2.
By
So
3.
yeah. So I would do 1. You'd do 1 point of damage to
Yeah.
him. Okay.
Okay.
Bad.
Okay. All right. And so then you would occupy the hex that he was in, and then you're going to be marked as tired for charging, but not for doing melee.
What?
And then we put the charge bubble on top of you. So you put the charge marker on top. And what that means is now during this turn, this guy cannot be shot at or assaulted or anything else, because the idea is we've got a lot of stuff that's kind of, this is all going on during the course of the turn. So it's not sequentially happening per se. All right. We can dispense with this other one here, because I think we got a sense of what's going on.
Yeah.
Charge wise. Let's do this one here with the, now you can pick which one you want to resolve.
Do you want to do the complicated one first or the easy one first?
Let's just do one of the cavalry ones first,
All
and
right.
then we can do the artillery one. Okay. All right.
Kill me with your leader.
Yep. All right. So I don't even know where your guy went. Oh, he's over
where'd
here.
my guy go?
Yeah, he moved. He's cheating. So at this point, all we're going to do is just look at what everybody's got to get a sense of. So I've got 49 plus 7. So it's going to be 1-to-1. If I were in line, it would have been doubled. I would have had 14 for that lance bonus, but he's not in line. He was in column.
How do you arrive at 47? I'm looking at...
I'm sorry. I've got 49 plus 7. So I'm going to have 56.
Where do those values come from? I'm looking at a 5 and a 4 at the bottom of that.
So you're looking at the leader. Yeah, so the leader is his bonus to the die roll for combat is 5. His bonus to morale check is 4. And then the cavalry, this is the Vistula Lancers.
They got 49.
They've got 49, and then it's a plus 7 for their lance bonus. So we've got 56 to 39.
Well, remember he took a hit, so it's a little less than that, but go ahead.
Yeah, so you're probably, 3 off? So you're 36 to 56.
Not quite 1.5 to 1.
Yep, it's 1.5 to 1. So 1.5 to 1 with a plus 5 for my leader. If Rick had a leader there, then his leader bonus would counteract mine. So if he had a leader bonus there, say his leader added plus 2, then my positive would only be a plus 3. So I have plus 5. He's got minus 2 because of his leader. So it would be a net plus 3. But he doesn't have a leader there, so I just have a plus 5. So we roll 2 dice. I roll a 65.
Oh, so terrible.
I think the
this is why I don't have a leader there, by the way.
Is spoiled. Yeah, I'm glad that you don't have a leader there, because it would have been a leader casualty. So the result is a DD. So cavalry here in 5th edition, they're going to take a hit for the zone of influence that they have to exit, and then they're going to rout. And so even though it says disorder, cavalry are either in good order or they've routed. There's no in between.
I'd like to point out one other thing with this.
Sure.
Remember, again, last week we were with the cavalry charges. In the cavalry charge portion, the cavalry would just move up to engage. And the melees were not resolved until after we went through the rest of the maneuver segment and then defensive fire, offensive fire, and then all the melees at that time, infantry and cavalry, were finished. Where in this case, in fifth edition here, the cavalry charge, the melees are resolved, and then we get to the regular maneuver segment.
Correct. Yeah. So that's a great point, David. And so this is one of the things with third edition and fifth edition was it allows you to kind of have this opportunity where you can use your cavalry to maybe get the other guys' infantry to quake or break. Or in the case with this skirmisher, you can use your cavalry to kind of brush skirmishers back, force them to retreat or force them to go into square. So that way, then it leaves an opening for your infantry to come up in the movement phase and do damage to them as such. So that's something that's particular with this, where you have that takes place. All right.
Yeah.
So the other thing of note,
Yeah,
An important part.
Napoleonics is kind of like the ultimate rock, paper, scissors game.
Correct.
yeah, the other thing of note is when I retreated, I left an enemy Zox. I took a hit.
Yes. And then I would be marked as, I'm pretty sure I'd be marked as exhausted, but it's been a while since I've looked at it. I know that I should be exhausted. I mean, tired because
Yeah, I know I'm tired.
because I
I'm not sure I did
meleeed.
both.
Am I tired because I exhausted because I reaction charged? All right. So it says here, cavalry that reaction charge do not become tired unless melee ensues. All right. So they are tired but not exhausted. So I've marked them as such, and then I would put a charge marker there. They're under the bubble, so they cannot be messed with by him. So the Prussians couldn't say roll up some guns and blast this guy. He's under this bubble until the end of the, I don't know, 6 o'clock turn, whatever turn we're playing. All right.
Is that like the Get Smart cone of silence?
It is very much like the cone of silence. Yeah. And it's just kind of taking into account the movement. All right.
Actually, from a tactical point of view, the discussion that was just had about the cavalry being able to brush aside the skirmishers or put some pressure on the forward, it's a really good example of why to have a good, strong playing method in La Bataille, especially fifth edition, you have to have a deeper formation than just a single wall. It really rewards a checkerboard of 2 or 3 levels deep, because that front row of your units is going to take damage and pressure, and a lot of time it won't be there when you thought it was going to be there. So you actually need to form up at some depth.
Right, and you can see that somewhat. The French have got some of these provisional units kind of in the back. They've got their better units up in front. They've got their skirmishers out there kind of as a screen, as a speed bump, for want of better words, to slow down the Prussians as they come in. All right, cool. And then we've got this charge here on
Which is it's actually very historical. If you look at the way the armies formed and maneuvered, they very often would have 2 or 3 rows of battalions deep, and this is why. It's because whoever's out in front sooner or later is going to get disordered and pushed away. So you really need that depth for the army to work coherently.
Yeah. All right. We've got the attack here on these guns, and they're going to need to stand, but the artillery, if they are being attacked through the flank, they do have an option to change facing. So this is for those of you following things at home. This would be Rule 13.5.10. If artillery is the target of assault or charge, a cheval, it has the option to change its facing via complete about face unless it's already facing an enemy unit. That is, it can shift 180 degrees to change what was its rear into its front hex. It may do this prior to giving defensive fire. So,
Wow. So you basically cannot creep up on an artillery unit with a cavalry charge?
well, I still have to pass my pre-melee morale check. So
Oh, okay.
defensive fire comes afterwards. So what's going to
Okay.
happen is he if I don't perform well, I could fail my morale check, and if I fail my morale check, then they're gone. They're eliminated.
Yeah.
If I pass it, then I at least can change my facing, deliver some fire. Maybe that will be enough to scare him away, and then there's going to be combat. So at this
Yeah.
point, then we would take a look at the.
I just want to throw out there, this is just example. Normally I wouldn't be doing any of this. Carry on.
Yeah, sure you wouldn't be doing any of this. Yeah.
Rick
would
has
be
to
out of
protect
command,
his
everything
cavalry cred.
Yeah, well,
Right.
and this is I think exactly what you did to those poor Prussian guns there.
Well, I
at,
keep my cavalry together. I wouldn't be
there
doing
you
like I'm
go.
spread all over the place.
Yeah.
But
Let's
Adjust
see.
your taco, sir.
All right, so
You could also pin the guns by charging two regiments. One
Yeah,
would be a
yeah.
sacrificial attack to the front,
Yeah.
and the other one would hit the flank.
yeah,
exactly.
so I'm going to have rolling to stand. I'm going to have a -12 because I'm getting hit in the flank, and then these are Lancers. Oh, but the Lancers we don't care because Landwehr and Cossacks don't count because they suck. So I just have a -12 on my morale check because of getting hit in the flank. So 43, that's going to drop down to
You're
a 23. So they're going to pass. They have a morale of 16. So if we're looking at the numbers here, the 12 is their point blank fire value. The 8 is their medium range. 4 is long range. And then 8 is their long range or their maximum range. 16 is their melee, and then 16 is their morale, 3 is their melee. So here we're just going to go ahead and change their orientation. And now we can take a shot at these Lancers. With 12 to 6, it's going to be 2 to 1. Shifted to 3 to 1 for canister. We roll a 24 at 3 to 1. That's still enough to get a single hit. I could have done worse to you, you know.
I know.
All right.
I
So
need to make a check?
anytime cavalry gets shot, they've got to make a morale check. So 46, that's good enough for them to pass. So now what we do is we go to combat, and I don't think there's any point in us thinking too much about it because you probably have
Let me look.
more than 5 to 1 easily.
16.
Folks, I have a hard stop, so I'm going to drop off.
Okay.
See y'all later.
All right. Take care, Brennan. We'll chat with you about
Hey,
next
Brennan.
about a new game. Okay.
Bye, everybody.
See ya. 16 to 3.
So 16. So you've lost 2
One.
because of the. So you're down
I
to
lost
14. 14 to 3.
Yeah.
That's going to be. It's going to be 4 to 1. 4.5 to 1. So you could roll an 11 and we
63.
could all laugh about it. A 63. No, they're dead. So if unlimbered artillery in 5th edition are disordered through combat, they are removed from play. So what we would roll, though, is to see if the guns are spiked.
spiked. Yeah.
And they are spiked, so they're not going to go back into the battery box.
And that's different between this and Premiere, right? Premiere.
Premiere, nothing comes back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So say the guns weren't spiked. If we go up here to the time track, you guys will see that there is the battery box for the French. So let's just say that the guns weren't spiked, and we can then go ahead and put them in the, whoops, wrong thing. We can then put them here in the battery box. Once we get 3 of a kind, so if we were to get 2 more horse guns here destroyed, then we could, then if we had basically 3 sets of horse guns, we could bring one of them back as a reinforcement. So that's something that is unique in that regard. All right, you would move into that hex and then be marked as exhausted, and then under the charge bubble. Okay, so that's the charge, all the charge stuff. And so now what's going to happen is we would set the clock and we'd say, okay, you've got 10 minutes for the Allies to move all their forces that have the maneuver units. So in a team game, particularly if it's a large team game, you might have 3 or 4 people playing on a side. So in this particular case, you might have somebody who's just playing the Prussians and the Russians over here on the east side of Dresden, while you've got another player who's playing the Austrians in the center, and then another player who's playing the Austrians out on the west end of the map. And so they'd all be conducting all of their movements where they have a maneuver unit involved. And so you'd go ahead and do that, and you've got 10 minutes to get it all done in. So Rick, why don't you just move a few things just so we can maybe get maybe an assault, and maybe we can get some fire happening or something like that.
I'll put some guys up here.
Cool. Oh yeah, awesome. Yeah, and so this is the other thing that's unique is the assaults are marked during the movement phase. So when in this case, the Prussians are moving up, they are going to be marking who they're going to be doing an assault against. And this is different than in Premiere, where you move up and you can fire, and then if you don't want to assault, you don't have to assault. In this particular case, you have to make that designation that they are going to be assaulting during the movement phase before any defensive or offensive fire.
Let's assume this guy is starts adjacent to that guy.
Yep. So if they start adjacent, they have to make a morale check in order to make it. And they're going to be penalized for starting adjacent. So he's going to have a -6 for assaulting the chateau, and then a -6 for starting his attack so close. So you'll have a -12 altogether. Hey, and that's a great roll.
That's an inverse, or actually it's an inertia penalty.
Exactly. Right. So
Whereas
the units that started further away.
Usually if you move to contact, you might get a plus bonus for momentum. In this system, you get the inverse.
Yes, you're basically getting there's a penalty for
inertia.
Inertia, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So what would have happened if I had failed?
So if he'd failed, he would disorder, and he would move back half of his movement, and then you could try shoving another guy in there. So from a tactical point of view, sometimes if your guys are in a bad spot, I will assault somebody hoping that my guy fails so he can get out of a bad position. Because if they disorder, that doesn't trigger opportunity fire. So there's times that you're like, okay, how do I save this poor guy? I guess I'll do an assault. And occasionally you'll roll really well, and you're like, oh crap. Now he's assaulting
At 1 to 3 odds.
yeah, 1 to 3 odd or whatever it is, and so then he'll take some losses, but maybe he'll get really lucky, and so it's the usual sort of machinations of fate where all kinds of exciting things can happen.
And the vassal die roller, don't discount that.
Oh yes, yeah, the vassal die roller indeed. I am apparently not one of its favored human beings, at least when I'm playing the Austrians.
Hi.
So
I've moved everything.
okay, cool.
10 minutes is over and the Jeopardy theme ends.
Yeah. So now what's going to happen is we're going to have defensive fire. So any units that are adjacent to enemy units can conduct fire combat. So we've got a couple of units here that meet that. So here I've got some of my skirmishers are adjacent to this Prussian battalion. These skirmishers are adjacent to them as well as to this little rifle company. And I think that's it as far as what we've got adjacent, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just going to go ahead and do some defensive fire here real quick. So this guy's going to fire here. It's going to be 9.
And he has to fire there because he's being assaulted.
Yes. Yeah.
If he fires.
Yeah. And then this guy's going to join in too with this hex because he's adjacent to it. So he can fire this hex and this hex can fire there. So it's going to be 18 to 6. It's going to be 3 to 1. 41 at 3 to 1 is a single hit.
Now, if you have a unit that is spanning 2 hexes,
Yep.
but the attacker that you're firing defensive fire at is only adjacent to one of those hexes, do you fire at half strength?
Yeah.
Or
So
do you get
so
all
this
of
guy is actually in 2 hexes, right?
Yeah.
So this hex can't fire because it's not adjacent to him. So I've got 3 increments approximately in that hex, 3 increments in that hex. So I can only fire out with 3 increments from this hex onto him. And this guy's got 3 and 3 also. And so the most I could do is 6.
Total is 6.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Now,
right.
these guys took a hit. And in this particular scenario, when the Prussians take that first, they're checking on every odd loss. So they're going to roll and see if they pass. 24. So they would disorder, but we're not going to have them do that. Oh, actually, they passed. Oh, they're better than I thought. I'm used to
Not
some
your
of the other
average
Prussian
Prussian.
stuff. The 1813, some of the early 1813 stuff where they're like really bad. Oh, so they passed after all. Okay, cool. And then we've got this fire combat here. So that's going to be 9 to 14. So this is 63. That's good enough for a hit. And so they take their loss. Now, fire combat here is simultaneous. So this guy's going to fire back at his full strength. So he had 2 increments, and I think he's, let's see, those are your Jaegers.
Yeah,
so they are times 4, so you're going to have 8 to 14. Did you roll a 61?
No, that was
That was your morale check. Okay.
24.
24, so that's a miss. And then you've got this guy in column. He's going to be firing his printed value.
He's a miss.
And that's a miss as well. Okay. So now at this point in time,
Do you guys know what he meant by printed value?
yeah, I think they know that it's basically on the backside. That top number 6, that is their printed fire value. 21 is their printed melee value, and then 23 is their morale value. And the little 2 here, that lets you know that this Fusilier can go into skirmish order. All right, so now we've got options. The fire is done on all sides. And so now we would go to our melee. And the French tirailleurs have an option to retreat before combat, or they could stand and fight. If they stand and fight, they're not very favored. They're going to be halved because they're in 2 hexes. and they're going to be halved again because they're in skirmish order. So they would basically have a value of 4 to this guy's value of 16 or whatever. So it's not the best. It makes more sense for them to pull back. If they pull back, though, this guy can then assault that unit. Well, so sometimes if you got a unit that's in back that's vulnerable, you might just have to suck it up and say, okay, I guess my skirmishers are going to have to fight in order to protect a unit that's into the rear. In this case, I'm going to retreat before combat, so I can retreat up to half my movement. So I'll just go back to like this, and Rick then has the option to advance into this hex and declare then a new target, and so he could then declare that guy as the new target of the assault.
Make a morale roll.
He doesn't. No, so nobody's had to make a morale roll yet, because I retreated before combat. Now this guy is defending. There's no fire combat, so this guy didn't have a chance to fire. Well, too bad. That's because the other guy was firing before him. So it's like the skirmishers all bugged out, and now suddenly this guy comes pounding through and catches me here. So I'm going to make a morale check. We take a look at pre-melee morale check, exactly. So we take a look at the odds. He's got 7 increments, and I've got 7 increments. So if we take a look at the odds morale modifier chart, and let's see if I can bring it up here on the thing for everybody.
3 for me.
Yeah, morale. Where is it at? Assault. No, those are the charts.
It's on
it's on
the recall assault, whatever.
It's under recall assault. So a 1-to-1, the attacker has got a -3. The defender has no penalty. So there's no plus or minus for me. So I'm going to go ahead and make my morale check. I roll a 61. I pass. Rick's going to make a morale check. He's going to have a -3 for the odds, but he's also going to have a -3 for every increment lost due to defensive fire or offensive fire. So because he took defensive fire, he took a hit in defensive fire this turn, he's going to have a -3 for that. So he's got a -6 altogether. So that's going to put him below his mark. He would then disorder away. But let's say, for example, that didn't happen, that he rolled a little bit better. Then we would just go and we would check our melee values. I've got a 16. He's got a 21, but he's lost 1/8. So he's going to be down to, say, 18. So he's at 1-to-1 on the chart. There's no pluses. There's no minuses. He just goes ahead and rolls, and we see what we get. Rolls a 32 at 1-to-1, and that is going to be a blank result. In this particular case, this is something that's unique. With some of the other rules, this would make both units kind of bounce away from each other. Here, what it does is everybody takes a loss. So the French player takes a loss. The Prussian player takes a loss. And now we go ahead and we make our pre-melee morale checks all over again. So now I have 6 and he has 6. It's still 1-to-1. I'm going to roll. I roll a 64. I pass. He's going to roll. He's still got a modifier of -3. He passes. We're still on 1-to-1. Roll again for combat, a 53 at 1-to-1. That is going to be the attacker loses 2. The defender loses 1.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the French go up another 1, and then the Prussians lose 2. And so combat is over at this point because we got a result that wasn't a blank result.
Now, do I take a morale check because I went to 3?
No. You would take a morale check. If it had a little asterisk next to it, you would make a morale check, but it doesn't have asterisks next to it. and
That-
you aren't.
That morale check only affects firing, not for melee.
That's correct.
Every other thing. Yeah.
Okay.
So at this point, that's done. And we just flip everybody back to where they came from. And at this point, then we would roll for units that are routed and disordered. So it's the end.
Only the active side, right?
Yeah, the active side only. So the French player doesn't do that yet. Now, there's two ways that you can play it. You could either wait until the end of the overall turn where everybody's done. We're checking and we're rolling for recoveries for everybody at that point, and then we take care of all of our cavalry stuff at that point too. Or you can do it where you're doing it at the end of that active side turn. The rules have a certain ambiguity where it kind of gives you the option to do it either way.
Interesting.
Yeah. So personally, I prefer the cavalry rule where everyone's cavalry is refreshed at the same time at the end of the game turn, as opposed to the end of each player's phase. I think it's a little bit more fair that way, because sometimes you can get two draws in a row where the French go and then they do a bunch of charges, and then the next turn they come up again first, so they could basically go twice in a row. Then their cavalry is suddenly fresh, and the other guy's isn't. So that's one of the reasons why I usually try to advocate having everybody recover at least the cavalry at the end of the overall game turn. So it's a little bit more fair that way.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but with the recovery from other stuff, we can go ahead and do that now. So Rick had one cavalry unit that was routed. They're under the charge bubble, so they actually can't do anything now because they are in this little bubble. But next turn, when they're at the end of the overall turn, we'll take the charge markers off. We will then, if anybody had been tired that wasn't part of the charge this turn, they'd recover. So this guy can't do it because he's under the bubble. But he's got a disordered guy over here, so you can roll for him. A 53, so he recovers. If he had failed the roll, he would then route and move the rest of his movement. So he had moved back 3, half of his movement. If he'd routed, he'd move another 3 back towards his depot, back towards his line of retreat. Yeah. And so at this point in time, then we're done with the allied player. And then go back.
Hang on.
Yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
You roll for either recovery from disorder and route at the end of a player turn. Does that include non-cavalry units that were disordered during that turn?
So anything of mine as an active player that gets disrupted in some way and or is already disrupted in some way gets to roll.
Yeah. So say for example, this cavalry unit over here, maybe it had in the previous turn, it had taken fire from a unit and had disordered as a result of the fire, and it routes back. It would then have a chance to roll for recovery this turn, right? So this one can't because it had charged this turn and it's under the bubble.
Yeah.
But anything else, what oftentimes happens is you'll have a whole string of units that, have routed as a result of fire combat because they got disordered first and then they routed, or maybe there was a charge that went bad, or any number of things that could happen. And those disorders then oftentimes will turn into routes. And then you will have a number of units that are in the backfield that are routed. And the units route back their full movement value until they get at least 15 hexes or more away from an enemy. And they're trying to then find a spot to park themselves in. So a woods or a village or something like that. And then they can sit there and they can roll to recover. But even if you're not 15 hexes away, you can still roll for these guys to recover. They just, if they fail, they just have to keep going until they're at least 15 hexes away from an enemy unit. Did that answer your question, Alan?
Yes.
Okay,
And
cool.
obviously,
Yes.
I can't roll if I'm adjacent to an enemy guy.
Yeah, and if you're adjacent, so if you had somebody here who was disordered, and they were adjacent to, they were in an enemy zone of influence, then they could not roll to recover, as long as that's the case. So whether disordered or routed, if they're adjacent to an enemy, they can't do it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. So we'd go
Okay.
back to the cup, and we would then pull from the cup, and we would get. So in this case, we've got the regroup chit. So the regroup chit allows units that are out of command to move towards their leader. So in this
So
case,
this guy's over here, and he's in command of these units down here, and they're out of command right
yep,
now.
they're out of command. So they could start to move towards him once they get within their command span. That is a span of 3 hexes, right? They would have to stop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this guy can
So
go.
you stop
1,
when you're
2,
just
3,
barely
4, 5, 6, 7.
in range.
Yes. So this guy would go right. Whoops. He would stop right here. He's got a movement of 8. So he has to move
Is
his
this
full.
the world famous hedging that I've
This is
heard
the
about?
infamous and horrible kedging,
Yes.
which in many games I will. You talk with the people that are playing, and we're like, we're going to allow kedging or we're not going to allow kedging. Usually, if you're going to be moving units and you want to try to get them in some semblance of order, you don't want to kedge. What you want to try to do is, actually, you can't stack those units together, right? You
There's
need a
multiple
leader to
units?
stack. Yep, you need a leader to stack in 5th edition.
I don't have multiple units there, so I don't.
You do.
I'm not seeing what
You've
you're
got
seeing.
right here. You've got a. Oh, what happened?
I don't see it. I don't know.
Oh, there he is.
I don't see it. So
Oh.
maybe I'm
Maybe
out of sync or something.
could be. Maybe I'm out of sync too.
No, this is a strange anomaly that has been coming up in vassals since
I'll synchronize with you.
3.7. Yeah, I was just dealing with it yesterday, playing a completely different module where some units will just defeat the mouse over. So,
But why
Okay.
can't I stack, Eric?
You can't stack unless you have a leader in the hex. So in 5th edition rules, if you're going to stack multiple infantry or artillery and infantry or artillery and artillery, you need to have a leader to create the stack. So that's something that's different from Premier. And I don't know. I mean, I only played regs that one time a month ago. So I seem to recall you needed leaders there too.
Well, no, regs, you don't need a leader, but you have a -3 to your morale.
Oh, that's what it is. There's a
Exactly.
penalty for that. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. All right. So yeah, so this is during the regroup phase. So usually what's happening here is you've got units that have maybe disordered or routed. They've moved back in, back behind the main line. Then at some point in time, they recover, and then you want to have a way of getting them to come back to rejoin their colleagues. During the regroup phase, this is when they would be doing that. They would be moving up and to rejoin their brigade or their division.
I think also, and I think I always forget this. I think if you have an artillery that's limbered in the regroup, you can actually unlimber it.
You can limber or unlimber. So
Yeah,
during the
limber or-
regroup phase, there's a couple of things that you can do. So artillery can limber or unlimber. Units that are not part of a maneuver unit and not in an enemy zone of influence, but are in command, can change their stacking order and their facing. So, for example, if we go up and we look at this French division, the 43rd Division, right? They are not part of a maneuver unit, but these different units here are in command, right? So if I wanted to change the facing of one of my units, as long as it's within the command span of their divisional leader, I could do that. So this artillery unit, I could limber or unlimber. Maybe I want to change its facing. So now it's facing over this way to shoot at, whatever threat's coming over the hill. Or if I had, one of these infantry units here, I wanted to change its facing now to deal with an upcoming threat. I could change its facing as well. So there's a couple of different things that you can do during the regroup phase. And usually how it works is whoever draws the regroup chit is then going to conduct all their regroup actions. And then the other player will then do their regroup actions after the other guy's got his done. In a team game, it could be the sort of thing that everyone's kind of, I'm doing some regrouping, you're doing some regrouping, just for the sake of moving things along at a decent pace. Okay? So once the regroup chit is done, then we're going. Any questions on the regroup chit?
No.
Cool.
Sounds good.
All right, we're back to the cup again. We're going to draw, and now we draw a French, the French chit. So now at this point in time, all the French units that have a maneuver unit assigned to them can go ahead and be active. If the French want to do any cavalry charges, they would then declare any cavalry charges. Then we would have reaction charges. We would have units forming square. We would have, all of that stuff that we did would be happening on the French side. And then the French would do their movement. And so in this particular case, the French had a maneuver unit that was here part of Pierre's command. So he's got these units. They could then move. If they don't charge, they can then move around, whatever they want to do. This division here can go ahead and execute movement. And then what we would have is, then we would have a fire phase. So now the Prussians would do defensive fire. The French would do offensive fire. And then if there were any French melees, they would be conducted at this point at the end of the fire phase. And then we would have the reaction phase, and all of that stuff would take place. So it's identical to what's going on when the Allied player had theirs. I don't know that we need to go through that since we're getting close on 2 hours here, and I don't want to have us go too long. So we could just go back up to the cup again, and we're going to draw, and now we have the leader movement phase. So now at this point in time, we can move our leaders. And so in this particular case, we've got Saint-Cyr here. We want to try to move him over somewhere where he's then got he's got both of his divisions within range. So he's going to move, say, over here. And 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Everybody's in range. So he can park himself right there. And in order to activate the core, he's got to be stacked with a unit of the core, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we can actually put him here with this unit, and that's going to keep
So
everybody
leaders
happy.
cannot leaders can't say, for example, stand on a road, which might, make communication better, and have divisions or groups of units at range to either side of that road. You can't do that.
No, not with this. It's the case is the core leader has it. You're kind of imagining that they're trying to they're sending a guy on horseback from one side to the next. Now, the army leader sometimes is a different story, but in most cases, it's just you're counting hexes. So if I'm within 6 and it's not, there's not some sort of intervening terrain or enemy units that prevent that 6 hex range, then I'm going to be there. But the divisional leaders, in order to create a maneuver unit, have to be stacked with a unit of their command. The corps leader has to be stacked with a unit of their command to create a corps-sized move. So you can't have leaders in an empty hex creating a maneuver unit. And so, well, part of the reason why is the only way you can have a leader casualty is if they're stacked with a unit that suffers fire or combat. So the idea was if I'm able to put this leader over here and he's in an empty hex, then there's no way he can ever be killed or wounded. And did that ever happen in real life? No. But so for the sake of the game, in order to force people to have their leaders at risk, if you want to have this guy generate an entire maneuver unit for his corps, you've got to have him stacked with an asset of the corps. And so, yeah, he's kind of behind the lines. You can put some other stuff there. But, if you got an artillery and you've got ricochet that's kind of rolling along, then you can do damage, and he could potentially be, hit by a ricochet attack or something. So that's a possibility.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the exception tends to be like the army leaders. The army leaders don't need to be stacked with anybody. They can be all on their lonesome. But you just want to generally keep them within command span of the corps leaders, so that way the corps leaders stay active and can generate a corps-sized maneuver unit with a single command point. So that's where you get more bang for your buck, kind of a thing. So.
And also, you don't want to be one of those players on the roll of shame who have lost Napoleon or something like that.
Yes. Well, and yeah, you don't want to have Napoleon get killed. There's been plenty of times.
I know there is a list somewhere. I know there is
of people who've had lost a game because Napoleon got killed.
Yeah,
I'm definitely on that list. It happened to me at least once. So
wow.
At the Battle of Eylau, he was I can't remember what. He was stacked with a bunch of stuff, and the Moscow Grenadiers came running up, and they rolled a 60-something and killed. Snowball fight, indeed, the worst possible kind. Yeah, that was. I think my
One
friend.
thing to.
Wow.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Eric, one thing to think about also, because you have communicating battalions, people can get in this mode of like just lining up their stuff.
Yep.
You got to be careful because, like, if I charge in here and route that guy, right?
Yep.
And then I'm still there, I just put this whole line out of command.
Yeah.
Because you can't go command through an enemy unit, so he has to go around, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Let's say he was one over.
Yeah. That's a good point regarding command span. You if you got stuff that's all stretched out, and then something. So, for example, here looking at the French, this unit here, 1, 2, 3. Well, they're still within command span, but here, this unit here is not. So 1, 2, 3. So these two are not. So this unit here is kind of the linchpin to keep his colleagues in command. If this guy disorders or routes, now suddenly these two guys are out of command from their leader. And if there's a maneuver unit that's generated here by the 43rd Division, these two guys would be out of command. They couldn't move during the maneuver unit portion of the game, but they could move during the regroup phase. They would move forward 1 or 2 hexes to get within a range of 3 of their leader, or to come into communicating battalion range with one of their colleagues, and then they would be in command.
Is there an adjacency rule that states that as long as a unit is adjacent to another unit in its same organization that is in command, they are also in command?
That's correct.
It's
Okay.
maintaining battalions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They have to
I
be the
understand.
same stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same division or brigade or whatever. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Nice.
And this is the other thing why you want to try to keep your stuff tidy as best you can. And one of the nice things with the Clash of Arms uh, units and counters, you can actually get a sense of, okay, these guys here are part of this division. They've got like a blue belt with red highlights on it. They're part of the 14th Corps. These guys here are blue with like a green highlight. So that lets you know they're with a different division, but they're still part of the same corps. So the markings that are on the counters help you visually get a sense of who's who, so that you don't end up having stuff higgly-piggly. Because if you get stuff mixed up, now suddenly you can't trace command through somebody who's part of a different thing. So
That never happens.
Rick knows from experience from when we played, was it Mont Saint Jean 2 years ago?
Yeah.
A bunch of his divisions of Rial's corps got all kind of intermixed there in Hougoumont, and suddenly a whole bunch of stuff was out of command, and it took him probably a turn or two to get things untangled before he could then start to get the steamroller going again.
Lost initiative and everything just ground to a halt. Terrible.
Yeah. So you do want to pay attention to that, and that's why it's important not to try to shove everything all up in front. Keep stuff in the back. Try to keep things, as Brennan had mentioned, in some sort of semblance of order, where you've got a front rank, a middle rank, a rear, and you've got a couple of hexes separating them. So stuff is still in command, but if something goes haywire, units rout, units disorder, it's not going to cause everything to go to pieces. So
the other thing I learned was, and Eric taught me the hard lesson, was don't lead with your leaders. I mean, he killed like
oh my
6
God,
leaders
yeah,
or something
the
in this one
young
hit.
guard.
And it just again stalls your whole attack for turns.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you had that one. You had that one divisional leader way out on the end at Pampelette, who got killed, and then the ADC from the Corps got killed, and then another guy went out there and got killed. It was the most unlucky division in the entire army. Nobody wanted to draw. It's your turn, Jones, to go out there. No, please don't send me. But yeah, if you have leader casualties,
because those stats are awesome, right? The leaders just can really add to it, so it's tempting to put them up there, but it's painful.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things, kind of the difference between Premier and 5th edition, and to a certain extent, Regs and Marie Louise. In Premier, your leaders are kind of icing on the cake. You use them to help rally troops. You use them to help with attacks, to modify things. But if they get killed, it's just a piece of cardboard. Here, if you've got a leader that's taken out, it could be a real problem. The first time I played Dresden, I played this scenario. Saucier got taken out by a random ricochet roll, and he was wounded for like 2 hours. So guess what? All I could do was roll for initiative with Pajol or Pierre or whoever it was. Yeah, Pajol. And that was it. All of my infantry were like stuck in place. They couldn't do anything. It was, it was a real problem. So yeah, you want to do your best to keep your guys out of harm's way. But there's going to be times that you get unlucky. So, all right. So
we were playing. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. And go ahead, Rick.
I was going to say, we were playing scenario 1 of Dresden last night, teaching some guys how to play. And Witterstein, is that his name?
Yeah.
The Russian commander, got a ricochet in the head, killed him. It's like, okay, game's over. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Or he retires.
Yeah. Well, in theory, there are replacement commanders, right? Because he's a
Yes.
core
Yeah.
commander, so his ADC would then step in.
Didn't
And
have one, but yes.
oh yeah, he might not have his ADC
Scenario
that
one.
day. In which case, then sometimes there's other replacements that are part of the
Yeah.
army staff that could come and bail him
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, so then we did the leader movement. We go back to the cup and we draw. And so here we drew one of the other maneuver chits from the Allies. We ignore it because it's already come up. So now we drew the artillery chit. Usually in 5th edition artillery, the artillery chit is only going to be used in a case where you have guns that would be firing as part of a special grand battery, or in this particular case in Dresden, these guns here that are part of the bastions that are in the fortress of Dresden itself fired during the artillery chit phase. So the ones that are out here in the redoubt, they're firing when the French do their usual fire combat out here during their maneuver unit phase. But the ones that are back here are going to be firing when the chit is drawn, or when Napoleon and some of the other special leaders show up. The French can form a grand battery, and then it can fire during the fire combat phase of the French turn, as well as during this artillery chit phase, as well as if the Allies are close enough that they're adjacent, they'd get defensive fire. So it's potential that you have a possibility with a grand battery that it can fire 3 times during a 20-minute turn. It can fire during.
Gotta put on a show for the boss.
Oh my gosh! You just basically shreds anybody who's nearby. It's going to wipe out all kinds of stuff. So. All right. Anybody else have any questions or suggestions on anything about the artillery phase before we go?
And just include howitzers, but it's fine.
Yes, and it also includes howitzers. So there are some. I think the Prussians have some howitzers here. I don't know if anybody else has got any howitzers other than just the French here. Then we keep pulling stuff. We get another. Allied chit. We can ignore it since they've already moved. Then we have the reinforcement phase. So let's talk a little bit about reinforcements. And so usually we've got some reinforcements for the Russians. They're coming here off of the road. And we're just going to pretend that they're coming on. So usually what's happening when you have a reinforcement chit, the units that march on can come on unless the rules specify otherwise. That is, the scenario rules specify otherwise. They're going to come on. They can come on in road order. And so what's going to happen is you're going to get these guys, and they're going to come marching on over here, and you can determine where you want to have them go. So you can set a destination point for them. So you're going to have a maneuver unit chit that matches the one that's going on them, then is going to go on a destination. And so what's going to happen is then every time the regroup or reinforcement chit comes up, actually the regroup chit comes up, they're going to then move and head towards that destination. And so this is a way then that you can basically get your guys going somewhere. And typically you can only send them to a named location. Typically it's a village or some other waypoint that maybe the scenario stipulates. Some crossroad that may or may not have a village might be the point du jour, might be a spot that you could send stuff to. And so that would be then how you can get stuff there. Similarly, if you want to create an administrative march, instead of kedging your units, you could then spend a command point and create an administrative march and set a destination for that division or for that, corps, whatever the case might be. And then they're going to march off towards that in a more civilized manner than what you get with kedging.
As long as
Because
they're not within 10, right?
yeah, and so they could keep going until they would have to stop if they come within range of either being assaulted or charged by the enemy. So if any part of their, um, a column of marching units gets within range of potential enemy interference, um, then that would cancel the administrative march, and then they would have to use a maneuver unit to kind of shake out and get everybody to come back into some semblance of order or use regroup to do that. So this is why, generally speaking, with administrative marches, you're doing this behind a screen of units where you're not at risk of being, having enemy light cavalry or other units get around where they can, spoil your line of march. So, all right, I think we've gotten through everything. Yep, all the chits, and so we would
That's
then just
one
go ahead
issue
and
of French.
draw the last chit there. Somebody have a question or a comment?
No, I just predicted that had to be the second French one.
Yeah. So once everything's all done, now at this point, we would say, okay, we would then have any cavalry units that that were not tired or exhausted. We would
Rally.
update them based on if they hadn't moved at all or had only partially moved. We would then have their marker updated. If they were under the bubble, then we would take the charge marker off, and then they would be available to be dealt with in the future. But you always want to update everybody first and then take the charge markers afterwards. And that way, then you don't take the charge marker off and then you refresh somebody who actually charged that turn. So, okay, cool. That kind of takes us through it. So does anybody have any questions? I know we covered a lot of stuff, but I hope you got the salient points. And I do want to let everybody know that the sequence of play cards is there both in the Discord server under 5th edition and also on the Facebook La Bataille group. And you can then it's got them. I've got the pre-phase stuff organized A, B, C, and D. And you go through that. That's going to be your command, your maneuver units, drawing chits, and then turn adjustment. So all of the things that are sort of happening on the capstone, either at the beginning or at the end of the stuff. And then I've got basically cards 1 through 16 that take you through the whole sequence of play. For you, as you've drawn the chit, it's now the allies' turn. Okay, am I going to do any charges? Declare charges. Then go through all the charge actions, reactions, etc. Great. Now it's time for movement. Now it's time for opportunity fire, opportunity charges, assault declaration, all that stuff. It takes you through the whole thing. And then I've got little cards that cover the chits, the separate chits, the 4 separate chits. So it's all kind of there. And a lot of the stuff, I don't have it where it references the specific, C 13.2b. I just have the general information there for you. So that should be very helpful for you getting through and kind of following along. It's a great little tool for people that are new to it or that haven't played in a little bit of a while.
That's great.
Yeah.
You did a really good job of explaining things, and I would anticipate if I wanted to play one of these, I would, right the day before, I would just go back to my 5th edition rules, go back through and read, and everything would probably jump off the page because of the way you covered it here, right? So I wouldn't feel like I was having to learn the system. It would be more like refreshing my memory and drawing up a list of stuff that I know I'm probably going to forget, but I need to remember. And yeah, I think you did a real good job of hitting all the highlights and adding some of the details in there.
Well,
Yeah,
good. Well, thank
very
you,
good job.
Alan. Thank you. And just like last week's sort of workshop demo, we left things up to the players and we left things up to the dice to get different
Yeah.
results. And so I think we got a fair representation of some of the things that can happen. We still didn't cover all of the different possible things that can
Oh,
happen,
yeah.
all the different types of things that you can do. We didn't do any artillery fire, we didn't do any ricochet rolls, but that's neither here nor there. But as I said, for Alan and others, the sequence of play cards is really good because you can
Yeah,
read
they're
through the
excellent.
rules and then you can just basically go, okay, I got through these. Great. Now the chit comes up. Great. Which chit is it? Oh, it's the artillery chit. I can look at the card for artillery chit. Okay, I can ignore it. There's no howitzers, mortars, or grand batteries. Great. Draw the next chit. Oh, it's the French chit. Great. Let's go and take a look. Number 1, charge declarations. I don't have any charge declarations. We can scoot through all of that, and now we can go to card number 8, movement. Great. I'm going to move my stuff. I'm going to do my fire. And you just kind of follow right along with it. And after a while, you won't need these. But the idea for this, I actually got from Stuka Joe. He'd put together something like this for another game, and he'd left the templates up on Board Game Geek, and I downloaded it, and then went through both Premier and 5th edition rules, and basically created a set of cards then that really are a great, hopefully, useful player aid for people, particularly beginners or people who are coming back to the game maybe after a decade or more away, that kind of help walk you through the process. So take advantage of that. I spent a lot of time on it. and it's free. So you just have to listen to me go on about that.
And of course, Stuka Joe was behind it all along.
Of course, yes. He's the granddaddy there of all of us
He's
YouTube
Godfather.
war gamers
He's
there.
holding the strings.
Yep. So great guy. I had a chance to meet him at ConSim a couple years back. So really nice. Any other questions before we wrap things up here, gentlemen?
So,
Eric,
hello.
one quick.
Oh, yeah.
Now you play the bar on Sunday nights, and there seem to be a lot of special rules for each module of bar. Do we see that in La Bataille? Are there a lot of special rules within each of the games, or does it stick pretty closely to the standard rules?
So there are usually with all of the scenarios or with all of the battles, there are special rules that are going to be different from one to the next. And usually it's reflecting the differences between the different nationalities. So sometimes the command structure is a different formulation. Sometimes the units are organized by brigade instead of division. Sometimes you've got special types of maneuver formations. Like here at Dresden, the Austrians have a formation called battalion mass. It's unique to them. And so there's special rules that go into that. Sometimes you'll have stuff with the old guard where they can do things that are particular. Sometimes you've got, things having to do with the artillery or with the defensive structures or with the terrain. So, yeah, you've got, and so you've got the overall the 5th edition rules or whatever rule set you're using is your base template for everything, but then you've got a few different things that are added on there for, I guess, for flavor or for the historic character that's particular to that particular battle.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, like the Cossacks, you have to make a roll to charge, right?
Yes, the Cossacks, the Landwehr, so there's always something a little different for things. And sometimes, the French might check on even hits. Sometimes they might check on odd hits. Sometimes the guard checks on the 3rd hit while everybody else checks on the 1st hit, and so you've got differences based on the on the nationalities as well. So always read through that. Any other questions?
Oh, I just have a comment. If you can hear me,
I can hear you, Bill. How are you?
how are you doing? Very good. Well, you know what? After all the hours of watching you, this is William Aarons. I'm
Oh, okay.
going by New Jersey Bill here.
Okay.
Yes, I've got the rules in front of me. I've downloaded the two Vassal games, and I must say that I really do. I feel this is just another reason for me to live a very long life to get to that point where I'll feel competent enough to play the game. So I want to thank you for giving me a reason for living 20, 30, maybe 40 more years. I'll be 73 this month, and you're giving me a reason to live. So I want to thank you for that. And I must say also the cards and all, which I actually went to a UPS store and I downloaded all this stuff today. And yeah, everything looks like it's almost like if you're going to get involved in this, you have to sort of plan as greatly as one of those great commanders did. Hopefully, the one that was successful that day and not a failure.
There you go. Well, thank you, Will. Yeah, and nice to chat with you. I actually had talked to Jim Soto last week, and he mentioned that I guess you'd been Dennis Spores, who's there in Detroit, had gotten in touch with you. So maybe you guys can play or something. But otherwise, I hope that you've been able to connect with us here on Discord. And what I'm going to try to do, and in fact, Stigler is an expert in Vassal, and I think Stigler has on his channel a how to upload Vassal, how to get a module up, download a module, how to open a module. So and of course it goes through a lot of details on that. But you can go to Stigler's channel for that on YouTube and get a sense of how that works. I'm planning on doing a little video on like knowing how to turn the units around and flip the counters and all that stuff, some of the shortcuts and whatnot to make life easier for you. But once you do it, it takes a little getting used to, but then you can play with anybody. And you've been following my channel now for quite a while. And you see that I'm able to play with, David's out in North Carolina and Brennan's South Carolina. Sorry. It's one of the Carolinas.
Yeah.
Brennan's out in the DC area and, Rick's in Northern California. I mean, we're all over the place and we're able to connect and play a game real time where without technology like this, we would be compelled to wait until we fly and meet each other at a conference, or we would have to try to see if we got friends in the neighborhood or people like that, drive an hour here or there to try to meet somebody to play. So this is super convenient and it works really well. And so I'm glad that you found us on Discord. Next thing to do is to get you playing a Vassal game with us, or we'll try to arrange something so you can give that a go.
Well, you also inspired me to download Vassal. As I say, I have both the Austerlitz and the Dresden game now downloaded on Vassal, and I was planning to do it. Actually, I bought a new computer, and I'm thinking I was just looking at some monitors. I think I'll get a monitor too, just to give me a larger, I guess, playing field, or at least a larger view. When I attempt to play the first time on Vassal, but any tutorial is going to be helpful on that too.
Cool.
Yeah, I just sent you a message with a link to a intro to Vassal. And I will also say, yes, a second monitor if I had my way, I would make that like part of the system requirement, because it really comes in handy to have a place like to stow all your charts and tables so that they don't obscure your map, which is important too if you're playing a game. But anyway, I just sent you a link to that video, and that should get you up and running with Vassal inside about an hour.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
I think Dresden Scenario 1's probably a good learning one too. Has a little bit of everything. Small counter density.
And I second that about a extra monitor.
Yeah.
Or a really big one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in
Well,
fact, do you need a monitor or you just buy a television now?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
was thinking
television
of-
works good if you have one, but I've gotten
Yeah.
really used to I've got my laptop, with an average
Mhm.
width screen, and I've got a nice wide screen for my second one, and yeah, I use it for everything. It's golden.
Cool. All
So
right.
where would I find this link, Eric? I mean, yeah, yes.
It's Alan.
I sent it to your Discord through message.
Discord. Okay, very good.
Yeah, and
All
what
right.
I'll do is, Alan, if you can, I'm going to wrap up the live stream here in another minute or two. If you want to send me that link, I'll put it in the notes section for the video. So that way,
okay.
then it'll be in the show notes for the YouTube
Yeah.
video. If people are watching it after the fact, they can then go find your
Absolutely.
stuff. So
Absolutely.
cool. Any other questions or comments before we wrap things up?
Well, thank you again, Eric, for
Yeah,
putting these
thank you.
on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you guys. And Rick, thank you for helping out here with the presentation.
Of course. I
and,
don't mind putting all my my cav all out of command now. It's great.
There you go. Yeah. That's what we don't. It was just a one turn presentation, so we don't have to think about the what happens next. So,
Yeah.
well, good. All right, gentlemen, I'm going to wrap things up here. I appreciate everybody sharing their questions and comments and wisdom, particularly my friend Brennan, who had some really good points to share earlier. And I'm sorry he couldn't stick around through the end of it. And David and Rick and Alan, thank you guys all for your contributions too. And everybody else who's out there, you have a great evening, and we'll see you on the next one. Be well.
Very good.